Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Depths, back with another Kamihime project video. First off, I have to apologize about not being able to upload because there's issues with internet and whatnot. So I was more or less only able to do it off my phone, and other places where I was able to connect my laptop to the internet, uploading speed was horrible. So I was unable to upload for a while. That's why there wasn't no event video, but I did post in a community tab. If you don't see a video about the event, check the community tabs because I will give you any insider info about the event that you should know. Speaking of which, to get this out the gate, we have a reprint of a previous event. So I'm not going to do a video or community thing about it. If you want to know more about the event itself, I've done a previous video about it, and also there's the Discord, so there's that too. As far as I've heard, there isn't going to be a union event for a while, but they're going to start getting into the new set of them pretty soon, so that's something to look forward to. This next upcoming update is going to add epic quests. I'll go over that in this video. I'm going to go over accessory quest rank 6 in this video. And more so, I'm going to start going over these guardians because these are new. Well, sort of new in the case of two of them. If there's more that's added, I'll do another video for that. But this is to mainly go over them. The first one's going to be the Light Guardian, who I already have at 1 star if you've seen recent videos. This is to pretty much discuss how to fight these bosses. First and foremost, do not, I repeat, do not go into these fights without being able to either A, remove buffs, and B, remove debuffs. Because that's going to make these fights very dangerous. So you've been warned. If you don't have both of those, you're going to want them. Now, removing debuffs, you may still luck out because there's still resistances and whatnot. And removing buffs from the boss is the same case, but you don't want to take any chances. These are very long fights. At least until you can actually get very, very strong to start hitting the damage soft caps, which is 350,000 for normal hits, 2 million for bursts, and abilities vary, but they generally don't go past 1 million or so. But just because you hit the soft cap doesn't mean you can't get more damage, so keep that in mind. It's just damage is greatly reduced after that point. So, anyways, going into the light one, when she uses either of her moves, raging or normal, you will get hit with a follow-up move if you do not remove the debuffs. So keep that in mind. If one person has a debuff, you're going to get hit with this. So the first one, it's a normal move where everybody gets an attack up for 1 turn, as in she buffs your team, but also debuffs them with defense down for 1 turn. And the raging one is the same, only it's a darkness attribute up, so if you're not using a dark team, this is useless to you, but also debuffs the light resistance. Either one of these is going to up the damage you take from her. Either one of those debuffs. You want to remove them as soon as possible, because what she also does, if any of your Kamihime have a defense down, I don't even think it has to be from her either, but if any of your Kamihime have a defense down, she will hit you, like the entire team, with a follow-up move. And if you have any light resistance drops, then you're going to get hit 7 times randomly with a different move. Either way, you want to avoid this as much as possible. This is why you need to have have the ability to remove debuffs from you. But the thing is, if you're using Herc and have Vivian's cleanse ability in her EX slot, you should have little to no trouble keeping up with this, because it reduces it to 3 turns cooldown. And if you luck out and actually get a debuff on the boss, which will increase its orb count, you will always always keep up with this. If not, then you won't be able to keep up with it in Raging, so you have to be a little bit careful. But in normal mode, you'll be able to keep up with it. That's a strategy. You don't have to use Hercules, especially considering the fact that damage-wise, Shingen might be better, and support-wise, you might want healing like Vivian or Andromeda's way better in this case. You might even want Cassiopeia because of Chaos Magic. Defense-wise, you'll definitely want Joan. So there's options, but keep in mind that you can have an EX go for a debuff removal. And because Herc actually has one-turn removal on all her abilities, that can actually help out with that. But Herc is still very good to use anyways. I've managed to do a lot of damage with her full break, but with other Kamihime, it's still pretty much basic. That's the whole trick with Herc. But anyways, there's also a trigger she does, which is extremely dangerous. This is the reason why you want to remove her buffs. Now, when her HP drops to half point, she will put a max charge turn on herself. And then she's going to put 3 attack ups on herself as well. But then she's going to end up hitting you 6 times randomly as well. If she's not in stun, she won't nuke you with the move. But she will hit you 6 times randomly with serious damage. And if her attack up is in play, it's going to hurt even more. This is why you want debuff removal. If you're soloing, you're only taking out 1, maybe 2 of these. Unless you really have a team built around it. But not too many people are going to be able to solo this, unfortunately. Unless you have an extremely good dark team. And then add on to it, other people will definitely lay on a lot of damage and help out on this fight. So if a few of you actually carry debuff removal, this shouldn't be too much of a problem. But the biggest issue in this fight is trying to debuff her. Her resistance is actually pretty up there. I don't know how much it is exactly because it doesn't necessarily say here. But it is fairly tricky to in order to land debuffs on her. About the same level of difficulty as the Ragnarok fights for the catastrophes. So that's something to know. But the biggest thing you should know is this. She has 210 million HP. So assuming there's people that can pretty much solo the event rate bosses, you need about a good 8 to 10 of them to reasonably clear this. If you got some very strong people, you can do it with 5. I've seen it happen. You can even do it with 2 or 3, maybe even 1, depending on how strong you are. But the general thing is just to send invites and try to get extra people in the fight. This boss does die reasonably from what I've seen, so it's not too difficult as long as you're capable of surviving. Now, moving on to the darkness one, she's actually a little bit easier. Now, first off, her health is like 10 million less. So let's get that out the way. Second, she will buff your she will buff her attacks and then debuff resistances. But it's not too bad, to be quite honest. The thing you really need to pay attention to is when it gets into the second half of the fight. Well, it's not even a half, really. But when her HP drops low enough, it says 40%. I think it happened around 50% one time. I'm not fully sure. But around 40%, she'll buff her ability damage. I mean, she'll buff her dark attack. And then also she'll buff her combo rate. But then there's another set of buffs she'll get where it's a white and a black skeleton. As long as she has these on, the fight gets extremely dangerous. When she has a white skeleton in effect, anytime she does a double hit, your burst gauge is going to drop by 30. When she has a black skeleton, anytime she does a triple, that character is going to be hit with paralysis. So you will want some debuff removal if possible. or just simply remove her buffs. Removing her buffs is a little bit easier. But this is why she has a lot of combo rate buffing. And she can buff both her attack and defense. So be very careful with that. I mean, not her attack. Not her defense. She can buff her attack and her dark elemental. Sorry about that. I'm reading this wrong. But the other thing too is that it says she does burst gauge across all enemies for 30 in her normal raging burst. It's not too much of a problem if you really want to be honest. The only issue with all of this is if you don't debuff her attack power a little bit. Once you get a few debuffs on that, the damage is definitely worth taking on. You don't necessarily need a defensive type soul for this, but it can help. Definitely bring a healing one. Definitely bring somebody that can remove buffs off her, and you'll be fine. And from what I can tell, this is the easier one to kill. But the main reason why you would even want to do these fights is for two things. And that's what I'm going to show in this shop. Once I find the tab. This trade shop has been added, and it's actually pretty good. So eventually we're going to get these other ones too. But when you start trading fragments and whatnot, you can, because there's a new set of materials, you can trade treasure fragments for actual treasures. And you can use those treasures to get these things. There's a lot of very good weapons here, but keep in mind they are harder to skill level than anything else, including a weapon that's gone through final break and normal leveling. So that's something to know. But there's a lot of different weapons that are pretty good. I'm not going to cover them all. I'm just covering the ones that's currently available. Now, this light sword gives you assault and a stinger. It's not too great, but if it does fall into your hands, because these weapons can also drop from the fights, then it could be worth using, especially against a darkness enemy. Now this one's useful if you don't already have enough exceed in your weapon grid, which you should have roughly about 100% worth of it, or at least near it. Now, to have about 100%, it would take a couple of skill level 20 large, or a couple of skill level 30 medium. But other than that, you'll need about maybe 3 of them at that point. It's not too hard to really get them from union events, to be quite honest. If you had them from before, I got 2 axes that way. So you may or may not need this either, but it's a special sword. In other words, it will be a glaive. Because the DMM version, the Japanese one, calls glaives as special swords. But this one isn't too bad either. It's actually better than the sword, I suggest. The one that's probably the weapon that anybody will go after, and I already have this at 1 star myself, because one dropped and I bought one. This is a staff. Now, anybody that's gone for a Phantom Staff setup probably has a lot of Union Staffs. This will compound with it. What it gives is Grace and Vigorous. What that is Defender plus Ascension for Grace and a Vigor effect. So it's a triple weapon. That's a very good combo, because the whole trick with Vigor, you have to keep your HP high. Defender gives you even more, slowing the drain as you lose HP, because the more HP you have, the bigger the thresholds between percentages. And then Ascension is going to make it easier to keep your HP up. If you have a light staff grid, this is definitely worth getting, because it's going to up your Ascension even more. It's going to give you a Vigor effect, and you already should be keeping your HP high from all the Pride weapons. Or maybe you have other staffs that can actually help you out too, who knows. But the biggest thing is that Vigor, because unlike Assault or Pride, it goes into its own little weapon category, just like Stinger. So that said, it's going to give you a bigger damage boost, provided you can keep your HP up. Problem is, Vigor tapers off very, very quickly. It's best at full HP, but it loses all of its power once you get half your HP remaining for that character. So if that character drops a half HP, they're not having any vigor effect. But believe me when I say this, it can do a lot to help your damage. But moving on, Darkness actually has a little bit of a better selection, if you ask me. Starting off with this sword, it's the same as the one from Light, basically. It's Assault and Stinger. Maybe if you want it, but if you're trying to build up a Dark team to raise a Light team, this is probably a weapon to go get. This next one is very, very good. It is Pride plus Strength, and it's a gun. Strength is Assault and Defender. And Pride's already acting like another Assault. So it gives you a massive amount of Assault plus some Defender. These are very good weapons usually when you find Pride and Strength together. Or Strength in general on a weapon. But that's a very good boost. It is a very, very good boost. This next one I actually have to click into real quick. But it's an Arcane Weapon. It says Defender, but Resilience is what I need to double check. And according to this, Resilience increases your attack power and recovery performance. So that means it's going to come with Assault and Ascension. So you practically get Strength plus Ascension on this weapon. That's what Resilience pretty much is. So that's actually pretty good. But not too many people are going to have an Arcane Weapon grid. It's very hard to get that. But this is a farmable one for Darkness characters, so who knows? Just keep in mind that the skill level of these weapons is a lot harder. And to be quite honest, you probably would want to get Ascension for Dark, considering the fact that the only real viable Dark healer is Osiris, as far as I know. And her heals are already pretty low, so Ascension will just make her more viable. But the main reason why her heals are low anyway is because she also feeds burst gauge when she heals. So there's that. Now, this is where things get very interesting. These Eidolons right here. First and foremost, I want to say that there is a Phantom one that we'll get eventually. She's not worth it. She really isn't. Get her for the scenes, if anything. But if you seriously want to get her, do not use her on your main setups, because she's pretty much a better version of a Phantom Lilum, but has the same restrictions. It's just going to give you a little bit more attack power than a normal Phantom Lilum, but also add a drop rate. I'm going to get that out the way right now. She's not worth chasing after. Not unless you really want the magic jewels or some extra stuff to grind with. But these two are the ones that are really worth it. Unfortunately, you need more than just treasures for these. You need to go get Kavis. Kavis can be found in the catastrophe fights of the matching element, but it has to be Ragnarok Catastrophe. That said, the Darkness one probably wouldn't be too hard to get. You just need to hopefully find those fights. The Light one is a hard one to get, because that is one of the hardest Ragnarok Catastrophe fights in the game. It is very difficult to fight the Light Ragnarok one. But if you can build up some Kavis for it, then you can build up this Eidolon. These elemental ones actually have the potential to surpass the best Eidolons in the gacha right now, which would be the 100% Eidolons for Light and Darkness, and the 120% Eidolons, which will bump up to 140% when they get their buff, for Fire, Wind, Water, and Thunder. But in order for them to surpass those ones as a main Eidolon, keep in mind you'll still need one as a friend. In order for them to surpass that, you need an exceptionally strong grid. I mean, pretty much top of the line stuff, which most of the case you're going to need multiple copies of. For an example, something I found out for the Light one, you would need a lot of Tish's Spear, Shingen's Spear. You would need a lot of weapons that can give you vigor, multiple copies from the gacha, so that would probably be Vishnu's weapon as well, which I just got. So just to go for it, I'd say you probably need Shingen's Spear, you would need 4 or maybe 5 copies of Tish's weapon, you would need a Phantom Spear, you would need Vishnu's weapon, like 4 or 5 copies of that. That's the insanity levels of how much power you need. You would need some serious power. But even still, these can very easily be the second best Eidolons to get, so you do want to get your hands on them. especially since their summon effects are pretty strong too, especially since it's based on the break limits. So starting off, Hagif, she's actually pretty good from what I've been using. Even just at 1 star, she's capable of beating out all event Eidolons. So once I get her to 2 stars, she is guaranteed to be my best light Eidolon unless I pull Monogarmer. She will, when summoned, will boost the attack power based on how many break limits she has. I've heard it's 24% when you get her all the way up to max. So there you go. This one, Altron, I don't know how to pronounce her name. She's a darkness one. When her combo rate buff is all the way maxed, it's saying 24%. So my guess is it's going to give 12% to double and 12% to triple. Maybe. If it gets 24% to both, that's insane. But it is a huge combo rate increase if you really think about it. And all the elemental ones have this effect, which is what I'm going to go over next. What it does is take the skill effects that you have on your grid and multiply them by a certain amount. There's 1.2 times, or 20% more, when you initially get them. It can be upgraded up to 40% the more break limits you have. So say you have 100% assault, and then you have this I don't want to 1 star, say, on your grid. You have 125% assault now. And it's not just assault either. It will do it for defender. It supposedly does it for ascension, which I've actually seen a difference. It supposedly does it for vigor, exceed, all of them. All your weapon effects. So every last one of them is getting buffed up. Considering I have a 1 star Hagif, it's going to be 25% more. But imagine 40%. I'm already packing almost 200% assault just from my grid and using Hagif. So that's to say it's not to be trifled with. That's why they have the potential to really pass the boost. Because if you know how to multiply your damage, which is assault times elemental times vigor times whatever else, like special and stinger and all that, if you know how to do that damage formula, you can probably calculate it so you can actually better suit yourself. If, say, Hagif's better than Mana, or eventually the Fire one's better than Cerberus, you don't know for sure until you really test it out. But keep in mind that even if they're not best, they are second best, and these ones are free. So if you don't pull 100% at Dolan, then definitely chase after these ones. But keep in mind you need Canvas and Treasures, and not to mention Canvas is used to get 5th accessory slots. Say you have a full team SSR Kamihime, that's 360 Canvas, because you need 60 per character. This adds another 150 you have to get. So you're going for 410 Canvas minimum. So expect a lot of grinding. It's not too hard to get the first one, but after that, it's much harder to get the Canvas unless you're fighting a lot of Ragnaroks that can die pretty easily. Good luck with Light and Thunder, because I heard they're the hardest too. And unfortunately, I'm a Light main. But that's the other reason why there's this as well. It's suggested that you do not use any SSR break limit items on these Eidolons. But I also don't blame you if you do, because the Canvas sometimes is very hard to get. Especially since we'll eventually need Canvas for 4th tier souls, which will be the souls better than Herc, better than Shingen, better than all of them. So it's up to you if you truly want to do that. My suggestion to you is to see how the Ragnarok fights play out and see how frequently you can get the Canvas. If you can get it pretty frequently, don't bother. If you can't, maybe do it once or twice, but no more than that. Because just doing it twice will set up an overall save at least 90 Canvas, which is more than half the total. It may be worth break limiting once, maybe twice, through that method. But suggestion is to just be patient and not do it at all. If you're a free player, it's going to be a lot harder to do that anyways. But me as a paying player, I still haven't really built up too many Dragonic Eyes in order to get those items so frequently. So personally, I still did it once on Haggith. I'm going to work my way up in order to get more copies of her normally. If I do it a second time, that's really going to be it. Because I would not go past the second time. Like I said, it's going to save you 90 Cavis just to do it twice. I wouldn't go any further than that. But at the same time, it'll also save you treasures, because it'll save you 180 treasures. You need double the treasures than Cavis, basically. And quite frankly, I'm grinding treasures for multiple things, but unlike the Adolans, the weapons can reset. So if you're patient enough, you can get a fully broken weapon instead of for 175 Cavis. Treasures, you can get it for 100 treasures. Maybe even less. I got one that luckily dropped, so I can do it as little as 80 if I really tried. You might even be able to do it for free. So you never know. And these do seem to drop a little bit more frequently than Phantom Weapons, so keep that in mind. You cannot get Phantom Weapons from the Guardians, so that's a big thing. But also in this video, we're going to be going over the Accessory quest rank 6, which is, I did a general thing about it in the community tab, but I would rather do something really more frequent about it. So looking at this, here you go. The biggest thing you should know about this is the fact that it does up the chances of getting more ancient drops, because you get 2 platinum chests from the boss, or they say rainbow in this case. But it's not, while it's not guaranteed to give you ancient, I still find myself getting quite a few ancients, so there you go with that. But anyways, currently we have the Sunday quest too, which is mixed at the time I'm recording this video. So yeah, but it's perfect timing for this too, since it's a new week, so the earlier somebody sees this video, the more fitting it will be. But for Monday, of course, it's thunder. Tuesday it's fire. Wednesday it's going to be water. Thursday's wind. Friday's light, which is the one I've been farming. Darkness is Saturday, and Sunday's mixed. That hasn't changed. You also should need I do believe runes to get into these fights. But each one has its own special little thing. I'm going to get this out the gate right now. All the bosses are the same, just different elements. They fight the same way. So when I look at this the first time for the Thunder one, I'm going to skip the bosses after that. But to get this out the way, the normal enemies on the first round, treat them pretty much like guild order enemies, or even like rank 5. If you're able to reliably clear rank 5, rank 6 shouldn't be too much more trouble, if that. Just be very careful with some of their burst moves. You should be able to take out their HP pretty easily if you're speeding through rank 5. Even if you're speeding through rank 4, but not necessarily speeding through rank 5. Rank 5 is not much harder than, rank 6 is not much harder than rank 5. So, that said, target the one with the least charge orbs, period, point blank. I'm not even going to go over their moves, but some of them really are kind of dangerous. But other than that, just go after the one with the least orb count and then go from there. Just using all my normal nukes, I can take these guys out no problem. And even if there's any surviving, I usually take them out with just one turn of normal attacks. They usually don't last more than one round against me. Now, second part of this, of the Thunder one. This enemy is very unique in the fact that its defense is the highest in the game. That's why its HP is so incredibly low. There's a reason why it has 30,000 HP. Because normal enemies will have like a defense of 10. Some of the EXP quests and the gem quests, you might find enemies that got defense that's a little bit higher, like say 100 or so. This one has a defense of 10,000. That means, and I've even have other people in the Union Discord, the normal Discord for my YouTube, they're attesting to doing damage that's less than 1,000 per hit. Like literally in the hundreds. It's very possible for somebody to hit this enemy for less than 100 damage. So keep that in mind. It can hit pretty hard, recover its HP by a lot, because in this case it's pretty dangerous for it to recover its HP, so keep it out of raging as much as possible. But the biggest thing, if you use damage over time, that's set damage amounts. So anybody that does use Mordred in their main team will make this boss a joke. If you can land your damage over time on this boss, on this mid boss, I should say, it's an easy fight. Because say you're dealing like 5,000 worth of damage over time, you're going to kill it in 6 turns. But Mordred sticks like a good 4 or 5 of them on her, so she'll easily take it out in 2 turns if they all land. So that said, damage over time is his very biggest weakness. This is the one time in the game where damage over time is extraordinarily potent. It's probably the most potent you'll ever see it. So this enemy, you definitely want to bring damage over time if possible. Now, like I said, I'm only going over the boss once because it's the same across all elements. But the bosses are all going to have 10 million HP. They have the normal defense value of 10, I do believe. The biggest trick with these is what the triggers do. Now then, the first trigger, it's always going to happen no matter what. So you will not avoid this. The very first turn is going to remove all of its debuffs and put up a debuff resistance. Now what makes this very dangerous for anybody that's debuff reliant is the fact that it already has a high resistance. It's going to increase it further, and to make it even worse is the fact that you can never ever remove this. So you're stuck with it after turn 1. If you're going to use debuffs, your best chance is probably now. You should probably use them and nuke the ever-loving crap out of it if you're going to go that route. But keep in mind that even though it puts all this up, it's not impossible to land debuffs. I've done it before. It's just not really reliable. Just try your luck and see. But if you're really trying to use your debuffs, use it before this. Maybe save the attack ones for after, because you definitely want them not to get erased. But just save it. But then again, the attack ones may or may not matter anyways because of its triggers. It's the one that's it's the last trigger that's probably going to be varied off of the attack debuffs. But the second trigger, anytime it uses normal attacks, it's going to put random effects on you. It's a wide range of debuffs. You definitely want your own debuff resistance instead of getting a cleanse, but cleanse can still help. So people that can remove debuffs can still help. But you definitely want your own debuff resistance on this one, or to try and finish the fight as quickly as possible. The third trigger is the one that's the most dangerous, because depending on the debuffs you have on her, she'll deal extra damage to you every 5 turns starting from the 10th turn. So keep that in mind. That's the point where you, if any debuffs, you want the attack down ones, because it'll reduce the damage you take. But other than that, the only thing you have to really worry about is that every time she will use her burst, which is when her orbs are full, you will lose 20% of your max HP. So be very, very careful with that. Keep your HP up, because it is a set percentage instead of the other things. Not to mention, on top of getting hit with any random effects that drain your HP over time, this can actually be pretty dangerous combined. But it's more of a fight of dealing damage without debuffs. That's the best way to put it. And it's like that across all the elements. Now, if you want your best chance of debuffing her, use your advantage. The team with the advantage will be able to debuff her more, and she'll debuff you less. So that's something to know. The way the advantages work will add a certain little change to your debuff rates. So if you're taking on this Thunder boss with a Fire team, there's no change. But if you take it on with a Water team, you have a less chance of debuffing her. She has a greater chance of debuffing you. If you take her on with a Thunder team, there's a less chance for both. Just not as badly as if somebody had weakness. And so you have a Wind team, then you got a better chance, she's got a worse chance. In order from strongest chance to worst chance, it is advantage team, different element, like say thunder or fire or something like that against a dark enemy. Same element has the second worst chance. So if you're matching element, you got the second worst chance. In the case of light or dark, that's probably the worst chance you'll ever get, because weakness is the very worst chance. So if you're bold enough to take this on with water, don't even assume you're getting a debuff off. But anyways, speaking of elements, and I'm going to skip the first stage enemies too unless they have something very, very dangerous. Like this one actually does have a little bit of dangerous debuff. It's a defense down drop for the middle enemy for 5 turns. So that could actually be a little bit dangerous. But it's the same, treated the same as the other ones. Kill the ones with the least amount of orbs first. Mid boss is where it gets a little bit tricky. It can buff their attack and then remove all your buffs. So it's capable of doing that. It can up its triple rate. It can do a lot of random damage. It's more about trying to nuke you as hard as possible. So keep that in mind. This one has normal defense. Only the thunder enemy had the weird defense thing. And like I said, we're not going over the bosses because they're the same. Now this one actually could be a little bit dangerous because the enemy with the smallest amount of charge turns, which is why I also say go after them, can nuke you pretty hard on the first round. So be very, very careful of that. It also says there's like recoil damage too, so I'm guessing when you when they do something, it will damage them in turn and remove. Well, the first one will take recoil damage, that will instantly kill it. But that said, when it gets its nukes off, it will damage itself. So you have to be very careful with that one. Because while you're taking damage, it will damage itself. But the third enemy will fully heal the HPs of enemies. So you definitely want to be very careful of that. Speaking of being careful, it's the same recoil effect for this boss. Keep it out of normal mode as much as possible because it has one orb. It can hit you randomly 5 times with a lot of damage. If it doesn't spread out, you can see somebody get KO'd. But it does have recoil effect, so regardless of what happens, this fight's not going to last longer than 10 turns. Period. Well, at least if you get in a raging mode anyways. If you don't get in a raging mode, then it can be 20 turns. Up to 20. So keep that in mind. Wind doesn't really have anything except for this very last one. And they don't have the HP amounts, unfortunately. But this last enemy, and they all have a 1 orb count, so take care of the bottom one first. I would suggest for Wind. We'll put a no time limit defense down on you. So my guess is it's not coming off unless you heal it. So be very, very careful. Now, this normal enemy is very, very dangerous for stage 2. Because from what it's saying, it imparts an overheat on you. And if I'm reading this correctly, then the damage from its nuke is going to be dangerous, or it will stick that 50,000 overheat on you, slowly eating away your team. So either way, you want to end this fight pretty quickly. Whenever they have a red wording here, you got to be very careful with that. But you have to keep this in mind that it's probably going to kill itself if it takes too long, so keep that in mind. The light ones, not too much of a problem really, as far as I can tell. This mid boss is going to be a problem because of the simple fact that there's 2 things that you have to worry about. First off, it has that same trigger as the bosses for the first turn, so good luck debuffing it. It even has ultimate level debuff resistance as well. So this is a good test boss for the stronger ones, because the stronger ones got double the HP. The biggest thing it's going to do is that depending on your buffs, and it sucks for me for my normal light team because I have Herc who has a lot of buffs and stuff, Based on the number of buffs you have, it deals damage to you. If you don't have any buffs, it won't deal any damage. So keep that in mind. That's where it can be very, very dangerous. You may see somebody get one shot. And for the darkness one, this one says destroyed 2 times for this enemy. This is the one time you probably want to go after the enemy with the most orbs. You can still probably go with the weaker ones just to get them out of the way. But you're not going to be faulted for going after the one with the most orbs on the darkness enemy, because destroyed means it will instantly kill you. Yeah. The mid boss isn't too bad. It's just going to put a lot of attention on certain characters along with a defense down. It really isn't too bad. Just remove that defense down and you're good. If you can't remove the defense down, just try to take out the boss before you take too much damage. But since the advantage element is light, they have a very good arsenal for healing and removing debuffs, so yeah. And again, I'm not going to deal with the boss. Now, of course, Sunday is going to be the same. It's going to start mixing elements, so be very careful who you take on. If it is Sunday or Monday, you may want to bring damage over time just in case you know who shows up for the second stage. So that's how it is. And they give suggestions on all the different stages. So the whole thing with Ruin, like it said, it's going to instantly kill you. Be very, very careful. Now, second stage enemies is where it gets kind of weird. Yeah, it says normal attack, it can generally damage like 2 digits. So unless your attack power is pretty strong, you're not going to get 3 digits damage too much. I don't even think your burst is going to get 4-digit damage, to be quite honest. So the defense value is going to make your damage near non-existent. You do want to bring damage over time. So there you go. And then they also said summoning Adolins can also deal damage regardless of defense. So if that's the case, they can end this fight pretty quickly too. So be very careful with that one. Now fire, it says if it's not enraging, it won't attack you at all. So reading back on that fire one, if it is not enraging and it doesn't have the its orbs full, it will just keep boosting attack. So it's more set on building up damage than nuking you in a raging state. So yeah, that's to clarify that one. Water mid boss can be very dangerous. It's going to hit you pretty hard. And then it's going to recoil to kill itself, so keep in mind. But it's only got 1 charge turn, so be very, very careful. So you have to be very, very careful with the normal mode. Stage 2 wind. If you get hit, then it's simply just going to hurt. This is the one time where you might want to just be a little bit offensive or just defensive. Thankfully, fire has the advantage of wind, so hit it hard, hit it fast. Be very careful, but it'll lower your attack and defense, basically. The light one, like I said, treat it like a stage boss, like a stage 3 enemy. Treat it like a boss, pretty much. And be very careful with your buffs. Simple as that. It says it has a low attack power for dark, but a very high triple rate. And even sometimes a double rate. So it's more worried about the comboing. And you do want to get rid of the attack buff if it buffs itself, so keep in mind. And then the stage 3 enemies, these are bosses. This is the last thing we're going to cover with them. These are the different effects it will give to you. A 50% attack down, cutting your damage in half. Overheating, which is like, I guess, burning or something. I'm not fully sure what overheating is. But it's got this burn effect. I don't know why I said blame. Flame, burn effect. Drown, poison. Corruption is putrefy. Blind. Illusion is the dizzy effect. It can put you paralyzed. And can do sleep. And it says damage over time. The damage over time damage is maxed out at 500 for any of the damage over times, and all of these can last for 3 turns. So that's all the stuff you gotta watch out for. Honestly, you get hit with damage over time, it's not too bad unless you get hit with a lot of them. So yeah, keep that in mind. Be very careful not to get overwhelmed with its damage, and you're pretty much good to go. That's what it's saying here. Now then, one last thing I'm going to cover, and it's not going to be that long. Epic quests. Now then, in order to start an epic quest, you will have to use gems to get in. But once you do that one-time payment, I do believe you can keep grinding it. Now, what these are previous raid bosses. So keep that in mind. It even has story elements in it too. But what it does is turn these previous event raids into advent level fights. And if you're able to clear expert difficulty, these aren't going to be too hard for you. So keep that in mind. Excuse me. But the thing is, this is your chance to get some old weapons and some old Eidolons that's been there. And even get the Kamihime from those events as well. So if there's something that interests you in these, check them out. But the biggest thing any and everybody should be doing is at least getting the Eidolons, because whether or not you want to use them, that's free Eidolon orbs. You get another shot at Eidolon orbs. So keep that in mind. Some of these are dual weapons too, so they may give you some good starters. But the biggest thing you should keep your eyes open for when it eventually gets released is Vlad. When Vlad comes out, go get her, keep her. She gives elemental attack across the board to any element and a drop rate increase. You do want to get her, you do want to keep her if you don't already have her. Simple as that. Anybody else depends on who they are. Some of these ones are very good, like Tiamat. And then, it says Spirit Turtle right here, but that's Reki. Jormungandr is actually a decent one in a sub-slot if you summon her for the attack down. Other than that, she's kind of meh. Jack Frost can actually be a pretty good one too. That's among the water. I'm not too fond of these ones at the start, Crom and Kastuga. They do release these in batches, so I don't think there's going to be one released at a time. They're going to just give them a whole bunch of them at once. But just keep your eyes open. Some of these are pretty good. Some of them aren't. You never really know who's who. And if you are indeed needing Eidolons in order to get the effects of the stronger 100% Eidolons, because you need matching element and subslots, this is your chance to get those as well. So keep that in mind. And you can indeed get them outside of the Eidolon Orb shop, thankfully, due to this. I don't know if they get removed from that shop though. So you do have to watch and see who gets implemented, and just go from there. So it says irregular, so it might not even do them in batches. Who knows? But all I know is this is your chance to get some old stuff. It's not too hard. Even newer players should be able to take them on pretty easily. So do that. Get your free SR Kamihime that you may or may not have missed. Some of them are actually pretty good. Like, a lot of people like Uzume. A lot of people like Light Amaterasu. I know there's Atalanta, who's a very good water one, who comes with a C-frame move as well. I know Cupid was actually kind of decent. There's quite a few right here if you look at this list. But anyways, that's all I'm going to cover for that one. More will probably come out when we do get it released. There's only one more thing I need to actually go over. Now, those of you who know the updates and whatnot have probably know who they're talking about in the news. But for those that don't, I'm not going to spoil it. If you do look at the comments and somebody mentioned it, unfortunately I can't control that. But there's supposedly either an issue or delay with trying to get a crossover to happen. So that's probably why we got another Kamihime crossover right now. They do say it's on the way. So chances are it's guaranteed to happen. We just don't know when. When it does happen, I will say this. This is probably the first time you will not get hentai scenes with it. So if you're playing on the 18+ version, don't expect hentai scenes. There might be other crossovers that will have that same thing as well. But I do know this crossover character for SSR is extremely good. So she's like quote-unquote meta tier. So you may actually want to try and pull for her if you really care about your fire teams. I'm going to try just because of who it is. But other than that, all I can really say is just be patient and try to build up your resources if you're really trying to go for her. Considering that the previous events haven't been all that great, the only thing that might have drained you might be the light boost gacha that we had recently. So I know somebody is really looking forward to this, and they've been trying to sell with gems like crazy. I think they got like 30,000 at least. But just be patient. Like I said, it will happen when it happens. They'll probably make an announcement about it. So check the in-game news. I'm keeping my eyes open for it too because I'm probably going to do paid pulls. So there's that. But anyways, that's all for this. More is going to come soon. The last thing I have to tell you guys is to make the most of the guild competition because it's still ongoing. It's not going to last for much longer. Some previous events too are going to die out pretty soon, like the last crossover we had for the Grisaia event's about to die out. But anyways, that's all for now. Expect more of this soon. Sorry this video went on for so long, but it's to pretty much explain and cover a few things. I had to redo it because some of this was in the previous video that I did not upload, but the event's long over and all that. But anyways, that's all for this, guys. More of this is going to come soon, and take care.